Well, like, so I'm just sat on the shoreline just now with my goggles after a couple hours of scuba diving through all of the tweets of S&P members and S&P cult followers, all implying that Boris Johnson is a Nazi or he's far right because he's been caught out having cheese and wine behind everybody's back. I mean, that really is a fascistic thing to do, you know. Quite frankly, I couldn't give the slightest shit. It's boring me senseless, as well as all of the demands for him to design. And don't get it twisted. I'm not coming across as somebody who's just dismissing the idea that I don't care because it's what the S&P wants, so I have to go against it. I'm being consistent because even when the S&P's own health advisor back when the BS first started in 2020, when she got caught out flouncing the rules, I didn't care then either. I said as much in my videos. It's just being on the grounds of consistency. I couldn't care less. But that is the talk of the town just now. So I decided to just go scuba diving, and then I came up to the shoreline and I witnessed the water in real time rising really fast. So who knew that Patrick Harvey, the gay guy from the Greens, all the things that he's been telling everybody, and he's right. The climate alarmism, it's real. I'm watching it in real time as I speak right now. And while I speak right now, I just thought I'd show you the photo that I was faced with when I first came up for some air. I don't even know what I'm talking about, to be honest, but yes, this is what I like to see. Photos such as this, the Sustainable Development Goals. They're never too far away, of course. Oh no, they're always there. If they're not there in literal form, in terms of their beautiful multicolored pictures, and I'm not talking about the beautiful BAMEs, of course. You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about my favourite topic, and that is sustainability. But if they're not there in their squared forms, then they will be there in spirit, in some capacity. And I love it, though. So we've got the proverbial one white guy, and he's probably got an early life section that you might want to check out, who knows. And we've got a white woman slotted in there too, who, again, could have an early life section that's questionable. But if we come to the left-hand side, above the bame of the cap, sorry, I am mistaken. There is a third land whale. A beached whale. I'm joking. Anyway, well, 3 whites, fair enough. That's very representative of Scotland. Very, very representative. And it says there that the Council of Ethnic Minority Voluntary Sector Organisations. Now, naturally, it's a council for ethnic minorities, and so I would expect to see a bunch of BAMEs there. But that doesn't seem to be the case when it's the other way around. First and foremost, there's not a council for white people, nor is there a council for specifically ethnically Scottish people. No. Every single other sector within society has to be inclusive, but they get their own spaces. But I'm not here to denigrate these people. I don't know who they are. I don't give a shit who they are either, because that really is just a formality at this point. Because I ended up just in passing when I was scuba diving, as I said, just through all the myriad of tweets. Oh, Boris Johnson's this, oh, he's dangerous, oh, he's this, he's that, oh, yeah, cheese, oh my god, fuck's sake, he should resign, etc, etc. And then I just randomly stumbled across this, asking me about my white privilege, or what do I know what it looks like. When we talk about white privilege, it refers to advantages because of the colour of your skin. Striving for diversity ends up being tokenistic. A good, quick read is from Peggy McIntosh, and she's quoted below. And her fantastic hot take. Are you ready for this? I wasn't. Fuck me, it took me aback a bit. I thought I was having a clutch or a sentiment call it. But then I remembered I haven't had any jib jabs. But it says here, what does white privilege look like? And the suspense was killing me. I was like, what does it look like? Tell me, Peggy, tell me. And she did. Fucking hell. I can take a job with an affirmative action employer without having co-workers in the job suspect that I got it because of race. Wow. I didn't realise that was a thing, but apparently it is, Peggy's hot takes. But they then, of course, directed you to some website. So me, I decided to go and, I've had enough swimming for one day. Let's have a wee look. And I did, and I'm not going to bore everybody with the entirety of the website because it's just gobbledygook. And for the most part, it's more directed at adults. They can do what the fuck they want, don't care. But, I went in there thinking this was going to be yet another website that's all about brainwashing our youth to everything that is sustainability related, as well as anti-racism, etc. But it wasn't really the case as much as other websites and stuff. But it was more the human rights aspect of it I was sort of interested in. I wanted to know how they were going to tie in race equality with human rights. Because human rights is something that I am hearing more and more. You're probably hearing it more and more, especially in Scotland. But it's another one of these phrases that gets coined quite often, And the concept in and of itself is tied, it's intrinsically tied, or it's become tied to learning for sustainability, everything sustainability related, as well as the global citizenship shite. They all come under the same umbrella. Everything's about human rights these days. They focus so much more, in the case of Scotland, the SNP in particular, but not limited to, they all focus so much more on human rights as opposed to doing anything that they're actually fucking elected for, you know? But that said, it says here that race equality and human rights are inextricably connected. As a social construct, racism is still prevalent through inherited practices and mindsets which have been influenced over decades of political discourse. The impact on societies and the community is often ignored or overlooked, which suggests that a fundamental change is required within the wider society to understand the value brought by diversity and ethnic minority communities. Because just by default, you don't know how lucky you are. You're going to learn all about, you're going to understand that there is value to be had by having brown people in your vicinity. You know, it's magical. It really is. It then says everyone has the right to feel included in a workplace, regardless of their background or circumstance. Where the work environment is diverse and inclusive, people feel secure and accepted, providing a pathway to thrive in their roles. Of course. So if workplace is too white, then naturally that BAME ain't getting a promotion, that type of thing. Yeah. But then they bring up something that I've grown in my old age. My old age, what I'm talking about? In my, aging age, I should say, to love, and that is mentioning disparities. Nothing grinds my gears more and wakes me up better in the morning than talking about disparities. Where it says here that racial discrimination is an ongoing issue that is common in places of employment within private, public and third sector. Within an increasing gap in levels of unemployment between visible ethnic minorities and white communities, plural, so Scottish and insert whomever else, there is an obvious need to address this disparity with alternative and long-term strategies. Okay, well that's grand, but maybe we should establish what the disparities are, why they exist, as opposed to just assuming automatically that because there is a disparity between BAMEs and non-BAMEs, that it must be due to some form of racism. But it suits these people to insinuate that it's racially motivated and racial discrimination is rife because that's what they get fucking paid for. It then says that the Scottish Government's race equality a framework sets out 30 goals to achieve by 2030 to focus on the continuing disparities in Scottish society. Oh, is that right? I'm not sure if I've read that before. I probably have. But then it mentions, just to finish this bit off here, that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights stipulates that all the rights and provisions within it must be enjoyed without discrimination against race. Furthermore, one of the core principles of human rights is equality. Therefore, being discriminated against on the basis of race is also a violation of their human rights. Okay, well that's great to know that their human rights have been breached because there's a disparity, but they don't know the reason behind the disparity because they've just assumed it's racism. But nonetheless, that's here nor there. It's just this human rights-based approach. See, this was the part here that just that little words alone, for some strange reason, it perked my interest for once for me to just start digging around, and I managed to come across stuff that's relatively new, as opposed to dredging up shite that was, from years and years and years ago. If I was to do that, it would just appear as if I'm making a video for the fuck of it. But no, this human rights-based approach, this is becoming so commonplace, and it's said so matter-of-factly, and quite often I have wondered in the past, what the fuck are you talking about? I don't know half the time. But anyway, when creating race equality policies, practices, positive action measures, you mean just shafting white men, networks, advisory groups, and the collection of data, this should be done by adopting a human rights-based approach. We believe that adopting a human rights-based approach not only ensures that you are respecting human rights and fulfilling your human rights obligations, but it also creates an environment of trust, value, safety, and dignity. Everybody loves dignity. Everybody loves dignity. But as I said, I'm more interested in what's happening in the realms of adolescence and children as opposed to adults. I don't really have any time for BAMEs who proclaim that they're not feeling dignity in their workplace and they know it's because they've got Velcro hair. I don't really care for listening to that shit because it's anecdotal. And I'm not disputing that there isn't actual legitimate instances of legitimate racism that may occur, but it happens both ways. But that never I talked about either. I'm just saying you can quite clearly be racist to a white person. The fact that they managed to disregard that and pretend that you can't be, that pisses me off. But fundamentally, I'm just sick of hearing that everything is racism. Scotland's rife with racism, and the reason that they get away, they say that is the case, is because they perceive Scotland to be rife with racism. Why? Because they get the shit funneled into their mindset from as young as possible, from all angles, under the guise of achieving equality by implementing anti-racism, etc. And it's just cancer. So I just ignore these adult babies when they start their shit, unless they have their sights set on teaching children. Which brings me to rights-based approaches and in regards to children. And we have here on the screen the Children's Parliament. I also had the Scottish Government's website up here where they talk about it as well. Saying that they want to recognise, respect and promote children's rights. These include rights to be treated fairly, to be heard and to be as healthy as possible. Our vision is a Scotland where children's human rights are embedded in all aspects of society. A Scotland where policy, law and decision making take account of children's rights, and where children have a voice and are empowered to be... Oh no, I never got this far down, I really didn't. Human rights defenders, you know, the 2022 variation of a social justice warrior. This is the new and hip variation. A human rights defender. Yes, of course, that's what the children are. False sense of empowerment again, but, you know, even there in that paragraph alone, they're sort of alluding, or they're foreshadowing what the future will bring, and that is, of course, that they're going to politicise children. They're going to tell them all that they need to know about all the social justice topics of the day, and they've got a right to be taken seriously. They need to be empowered. It's their right. We are taking steps to ensure parents and families, communities, local and national governments and organisations which work with children and families all play a critical role in helping children understand and experience their rights. And they go on to mention that they are taking steps to ensure that children enjoy their rights as set out in the United Nations Rights of the Child. You know, if it wasn't for the United Nations, these children would be so bereft of any notion of how to enjoy their childhood. I don't know how the fuck we managed it before this, but wow, I'm so glad that they now exist. Implementing the UNCRC and incorporating into Scots law to make it unlawful for public authorities, including the government, to act incompatibly with the UNCRC requirements. An action plan to help children and young people experience their rights, aka you're just going to start teaching them about the UNCRC. Using the child's rights and well-being impact assessment to ensure that our policies and legislation protect and promote the rights and well-being of children and young people. And then it says reporting on our progress to the Parliament and to the UN as part of the UK's responsibilities as the state party to the UNCRC. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the UK signed up to all these human rights charters as well. You never really hear them ever making much of a fuss about it, but up here in Scotland, it's all systems go. UNCRC is a global gold standard for children's rights and sets out the fundamental rights of all children. It's the most widely ratified human rights treaty in the world, and sets out the specific rights that all children have to help fulfil their potential, including rights relating to health and education, leisure and play, fair and equal treatment, protection from exploitation, and the right to be heard. You know, so the UK adopted this in 1991. But then it goes on to mention again, the right for every child. Fulfilling children's rights is also critical to our commitment to keep that promise. I'm pretty sure I was watching something about that in the Parliament a while ago, but we have produced a guide to help children and young people understand the UNCRC. In partnership with Young Scotland Children in Scotland, Activate Your Rights was created by young people for young people to help them find out about their rights, what the UNCRC means to them, and what to do if they feel their rights aren't being respected. Okay? So there's naturally a multitude of things that I could click on here. I could have a field day. But I came across this video on the Children's Parliament website. No, not this one. Here. So this is from 2017. I know, so I'm not dredging up old content, but like the premise of this video is not centered around this video solely. There is other stuff that's much more new, but this here, just to see here some of the stuff that the children come away with. Now these are children that have learned all about their rights, and I love how this was being adopted into, you know, educational settings prior to the UNCRC ever being enshrined into Scots law, and naturally it's still not as of yet, but the fact is that it was never enshrined in law, but yet they were acting as if it was by introducing these children to it prior anyway. But happy, healthy and safe, a children's rights approach for Scotland for 2017, right? And some of the stuff that these kids say, I don't know how to describe it here, but I mean, it does boil down to something that's been said before by myself, by the likes of No Chance, and by people that are much more intellectual than the pair of us, as well as just pundits on occasion. You will have heard people make reference to the fact that they are trying to eradicate the differences between children and adults in Scotland, or just in society in general, but obviously in this context we're talking about Scotland. I've said on numerous occasions that there's this weird dynamic starting to emerge, this strange relationship that's one-sided, obviously, for now, with the state obsessing over children. But most definitely they are trying to sort of create this perception even, that children and adults, there's no differences between the two, but they're simultaneously presenting or promoting that shit, indirectly, or maybe directly, I don't know, to these children as well as adults and everybody else in society. So again, adding in fuel to the fire, so to speak, with that false sense of empowerment. But you're giving children that idea themselves, that there's no difference between me and the adults. There is. But it's fundamentally, though, at its core, it does or could lead to the undermining of parental, ownership, essentially. So, again, when I play this video, who are these kids actually talking to? Who are they addressing? They're just addressing adults in general. It's a blanket term. Is this applicable to their parents as well? Or is this just random adults in the street? It can't be random adults on the street, because you shouldn't be having these conversations with random adults on the street. So it's either teachers, or it's their parents or adults in their life. And I'm inclined to believe it's probably the latter. So...
of the Children's Parliament in Aberdeen, and we're here to try and explain what adults can do to keep us healthy and happy and safe.
We're coming to the end of our year at Children's Parliament,
where we became Imagineers and imagined our city as a place where children are...
Jesus Christ, I didn't realise people from Aberdeen sounded so much like people from Inverness. Our city.
Healthy, happy and safe.
In this film we will be exploring what it means to have a children's rights approach at home, in school and the community.
Your rights are given to you not because you've done well or because you've done badly. They are given to you because you exist. That's simply it. You get them because you exist.
Children's rights are universal. They belong to every child in the universe.
Children's rights are inalienable. It means no one can take your rights away, and they're yours.
All rights are indivisible, and indivisible means that no right is more important or less important than the other.
Children's rights are human rights, and all rights are shared.
So this is the first question. What do adults think about children's rights now? Remember this, one of the children here, and I'm pretty sure it's the first child, unless that's him on the screen now, then it's no, it must be the second. But the response that they give to this, and it just, I don't know, I get a sort of impression that this is immediately sort of, it's creating this us versus them. And it's creating a sort of sense of self-entitlement in many respects, because there is parts of this video where I was muttering to myself, you're a little shite. You know what I mean? You'll see what I'm saying.
I think that some adults are afraid of children's rights.
Some adults...
They're afraid of children's rights. I mean, I don't know how it's been presented to them in the classroom, so I can only speculate, but I mean, I've got my ideas. Because a lot of the kids in the case of climate change, for example, I've seen videos where they're talking about how they now feel like they're being listened to, but they, for the longest time they didn't feel like they were being listened to, and they say, some of these children, they say it with such mannerisms, or you can hear it in the tone of their voice, that they were somewhat insulted by the fact that they weren't being taken seriously, when naturally they shouldn't be taken seriously, because I don't want to hear what a 7-year-old has to say about climatology. But anyway, and this boy here, I mean, he's got quite the mouth on him, This is self-empowerment, I'm sure. he crops up quite a few times in this, and I mean, he's obviously he's obviously very clued up when all things children's rights, but Jesus Christ.
Won't understand children's rights, because they think that these children should have all these privileges and like, some adults will think oh well, he's been bad, so I shouldn't be giving him this and I shouldn't be giving him that. When really, just because we've been annoying or we've been bad or we've been something like that, we should still got all these rights. The rights that you have when you're bad is the rights that we have when we're bad as well. So don't just make it all about yourself and all about your rights and we've got the right to do this and we've got the right to do that. Make it about our rights as well.
It's very bizarre. I mean, I'm borderline stuck on what to actually add to that. I don't know what to say because it's just very strange. There's malevolent reasons behind it, without a doubt. I mean, it does lead to politicization of children, as we've seen so many times now with all this BS since it's become more prevalent. But it's the attitude that some of these children start to formulate. And again, it goes back to what I said a few minutes prior to this, that it in turn could lead to the undermining of parental power, parental responsibility, like ownership of their child, because it's creating a divide, a division. I have a right to be taken seriously and you're not listening to me, Dad, type of thing, you know? I know it sounds petty, but that's borderline what it sounds like. And again, it's creating the notion to these children, they're being presented with the idea, something to think about in their spare time, that there's no differences between themselves and the adults in the room. When there is, they're children. But they don't see it like that. They have a right to be heard and listened to and respected. But the reality of the matter is the people that have told them that that's the case don't give a fucking shit about that. The only reason that they have told these kids to think that way is because it gives them carte blanche, the excuse to propagandise them. You know? Oh, you've got the same rights as the adults, so let me tell you all about climate change. And feminism. I know you're only 4, but here.
It's not that difficult to have a children's right approach. All you have to do is listen.
That's a good piece of advice, to always, another bit like, treat others how you want to be treated. So the way you talk to other adults should not be so different from the way you talk to children. Obviously, it will be a bit different. You know, you might be using very adult-like languages, you know, like very long words. So when you talk to children, try to simplify everything you say to them, and when you're talking to them, don't try to make them feel like a child.
Don't try to make them feel like a child. You are a child. You know, you're a child who's been robbed of you. Your innocence has been robbed. But I know maybe she's meaning more that they speak down to them as if they are, you know, but subpar in the brain, in brain capacity. But, you know, just the way she worded that there. Don't speak to us like we're children. You are a child, so the fuck?
Because that can be irritating and annoying sometimes. So talk to a child the way you would talk to an adult, but
talk to a child the way you talk to an adult, you know? Well, it kind of depends on what the conversation's about, to be honest, but okay.
Just simplify your language if you can.
I think that adults should include me in any discussion that is about me or includes me, because it is about me, and if anything's going to happen to me or anything's wrong with me, I should know. Again,
I mean, it's presented to him in a manner that he seems to think is you know, yeah, I totally agree with that. But to me, what I seen there, or what I heard there, was yet another minor example, albeit, but it's still an example nonetheless, of the undermining of parental ownership. It's up to the parents when they decide to tell their child anything of importance. It's up to the parents what they decide to do in terms of disclosing information. You know? So for the state essentially to just rob the parents of that ability to make these choices with each other or for themselves. Nah. It's just I just don't like it. I know a hot take from me, but
Rights and respect would be like, you go to the doctors, they don't just talk to your mum and ask you what's wrong with you, and then ask your dad what's wrong with you. They speak to you as well. They ask you how you're feeling, how long has this been going on, how it's making you feel, how inside you feel.
Okay.
Adults should respect you because if you don't respect them, it takes away the kid's human dignity.
What the if an adult doesn't respect the child, and they deserve respect. They fucking demand that respect. But if you don't respect said children, you are robbing them, depriving them of human dignity. No child comes up with themselves. Yes, United Nations for you.
Respect means to me that I am treated fairly.
Respect to me is someone going, could you please do this? Speaking in a lower-toned voice.
Just
being chill.
That boy's fucking brilliant. But I'm not playing all this. There's other things I want to look up. But just to give you a bit of an idea as to some of the stuff that these kids are coming away with. And I just find it very bizarre. Let's see.
Adults can be quite controlling and they sort of make up their mind on what the child does, but if they've got these rights, then, you know, they know what they need, you know, what they're entitled to.
I mean, I think that girl's just summed it up for me, you know? Undermining parental authority, right there and then. Adults can be quite controlling. If we're talking about your parents, then they've got every right to be somewhat controlling. You know? But if you know your rights, you'll know what you need. You're a child. It doesn't fucking matter what you think you need because what the United Nations has told you. You know?
Rights that it's not just about the children, although they are called children's rights, but it's about the adults too, when they've got to be fair on you, kind on you, and they've not to go too hard on you.
My message to adults is to be more positive, because sometimes we're just negative to everything that you do.
I would prefer if adults, and not just adults but friends too and family members, felt what you're feeling and understand what you're going through.
The mural's about our journey through the Children's Parliament, and it's got our memories of the last year and our thoughts of the last year and our thoughts about the future too.
I was a member of the Children's Parliament when I was young, and I feel like I've benefited from a children's rights approach.
In the Children's Parliament, they listen to what you have to say because they want to see what children have to say about what they want to do.
I think it has influenced me at many points in my life. When I was a child, I found the confidence through it to speak up for myself, and as an adult, I feel like I now know how to speak to a child and treating them as they would want to be treated.
And in 2021, obviously, that was when the UNCRC was supposed to be put into Scots law. And I stand corrected, actually. I said earlier on, ratification, and I thought that meant the same thing as being enshrined in law. It's not. So, if I'm not mistaken, if this had been and when it is, that would make Scotland one of the first countries to actually enshrine it into law. There's a difference between sort of accepting it in principle, which is the ratification. But nonetheless, so in 2021, it was the year of childhood, and it's a year-long celebration of childhood running for 2021. During the year, we are exploring childhood through the lens of children's human rights, creating opportunities to share rights-based practice in an atmosphere of optimism and confidence. Who's it for? Well, children will of course be central to the year of childhood. Sharing experiences and advising Children's Parliament on the programme is for all grown-ups to be listening, sharing ideas and experiences, raising awareness and promoting good practice. Right, okay. Why now? The aim of the programme is to support the implementation of the UNCRC, which is due to be passed into Scots law in spring 2021. Also, it's the Children's Parliament's 25th birthday year, and we've a lot of learning to share. What's the big deal with children's human rights? The UNCRC sets out the human rights that must be realised for every child to flourish and reach their full potential. So are you trying to suggest that every child prior to this being enshrined into Scots law never reached their full potential in Scotland? I mean, what a load of fucking nonsense. I mean, for a statement like that to be remotely true, you would have to point to all the generations that have come before said children and showcase all their failures, the abject failures that they became. Again, that is nothing short of an excuse to start politicising children, because the UNCRC seems to just, wherever it goes, wherever it appears, bring along with it climate change education, and all other things social justice related, because remember folks, they have a right to be listened to, taken seriously and all the rest of that jazz. But why now? Well, I'll tell you why now, because we are starting to accelerate the regime. We need to accelerate the transformation of society in order to achieve the 2030 targets. So why now? I'll tell you why now. We need to get on board. We need the youth for the future. We need to sort of cut out the middleman here. We can't expect these children to learn this bullshit as they in their adolescent years and pray for the best that they will become just like like us, ideologues. No, we'll get them when they're young. Well, that's why now. Childhood is the most important. Sorry, what? No, this one here. Many children's human rights making children's human rights real ensures all children will grow up happy, healthy, safe, and live with dignity. Because if they don't feel happy, nor healthy, or are healthy, or unhealthy, I should say, or they feel unsafe, or end up being unsafe, and if they live without dignity, and remember that kid, he was talking about the fact that if you don't treat him with respect, you're robbing him of his dignity. So you could end up in hot water because you're breaking the law, because you're breaching their rights. And when we're progressing in this trajectory towards giving these children the ability to believe to themselves that they are, that the adults are no better than them, they are on a level playing field, there's no differences between the two of them. I mean, I can't help but feel that you're asking for trouble in some respects. If it's enshrined in Scots law and you breach one of their rights, you're in jeopardy of being in trouble, presumably via Scots law. Am I right or am I wrong? And if I'm wrong, what the fuck are they enshrining it in law for then? What's the point? Apart from the obvious elephant in the room regarding politicisation. And then there's another video here. I'm not going to play all of it, but I'll play it from about here, on you go.
You're being hurt.
Children's Parliament has been fighting for children's rights, and we hope to keep on fighting.
They took it to the people who do have the power to do.
Look at this. The children, with John Swinney there and Nicola Sturgeon. I wonder what they were all discussing this time around, Sturgeon, of course, doing the routine of pretending to give a shit about what the children are talking about. And, what did you learn? What have you got for me? And then they're going to regurgitate probably something climate change related, or maybe it's about slavery, anti-racism, feminism, who knows, the LGBT, transgender identity issues and whatnot. Sturgeon will head bob, John Swinney will agree and say he's proud of them and to keep up the good work, etc. When the reality of the matter is, they're only sat there reiterating what they've been taught, they're reiterating what they've read and have been taught to, etc., courtesy of the very people that they are reiterating it to in the first place, if that makes sense.
And they help children get that next step, to get their views heard for their friends.
Why am I doing this?
So, the Children's Parliament, you went to the Children's Parliament and you spoke to a bunch of children, you started promoting the UNCRC to them, and then you somehow managed to pull a few strings because you're Nicola Sturgeon, and you managed to get these children to appear at the United Nations. Oh, wow. Fucking wow. And what did that achieve exactly? I just need to denigrate the children. They probably think this is wonderful. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't see what that was supposed to have achieved.
I want children to understand their rights and know all their rights so that they can stand up for themselves.
But the thing is, though, this has become so, overbearing. In terms, it's superseding so many other aspects of what they're supposed to be in school for. And I know that those days are long gone, but normality, that is. But it seems that more and more focuses on their rights as opposed to anything else. And if it's not their rights, it's climate. There's always something that it shouldn't be. But rights is always in and around the middle somewhere.
Around the world, adults and children are working together to make the world a better place for the children that are living.
And who the fuck told you that? I mean, if one of your peers, one of the little 5 and 6 year olds told you that, fair enough. But if that was a politician or an adult, then they're fucking grooming you.
I think Scotland's made a lot of progress, and because they're now taking in that the rights will be embedded in Scottish law.
We have also confirmed that next year, 2019, we will take the next step towards incorporation of the UN Convention on the rights of the child into Scots law. It's something I feel very passionate about.
Well, right now I still think they should make it a law, because right now, since it isn't a law, a lot of people can give it thought, but they don't necessarily have to follow the children's right.
Adults need to realise that children do have rights. When it comes up on the news, like this is now a law, you have to follow it, people will realise, and the people who maybe don't treat their kids as well as they should, they'll say it and they'll think, maybe I am not being quite fair on them. And the children that are sitting alongside them watching it will realise, I have rights, I can speak up. More adults.
Alright. No shouty teachers. Children's rights matter. Make children's rights real, etc. You know? So it's just, I don't know. Look at all this, man. Don't sell, I can't even read that. What's this one? We want to tell a trusted adult our worry. And why do you need the UNCRC in order to be able to do that exactly? Oh my god. Now again, this is a classic example of like politicisation, because in order for these children to attend this protest demanding that the UNCRC is implemented into Scots law, they first and foremost have to be, introduced to it. You know? But obviously this is a lesser example of other issues. So, the climate change one, really, that one pisses me off the most, because they'll protest demanding change, imminent action must be taken right now, etc. And all they're doing is regurgitating what they've been taught in school. But this is the same principle but less severe. Because I'm not entirely sure what all they can be taught about the UNCRC. I don't know. It's just fucking strange. And then we've got Mary Todd there, little Mo. Jesus Christ, I forgot. I don't know if I've ever seen these protests before. I don't know if I want to be honest. Love and understanding. A right to play. A right to play. We need to implement something into our law that supersedes our own law, so a child can then tell themselves that they have the right to play. Because prior to that being enshrined into Scots law, prior to that superseding our own law, that child and every other child in Scotland never had a right to play. Well, I must have been fucking daydreaming every day of my childhood when I went out to play. I didn't require permission from the United Nations. Fucking hell, man. I don't know. do you know what it is? Fundamentally, I'm just sick and tired. I'm very sketched out by a lot of the shit that I'm witnessing coming into Scottish academia. Sometimes a bit pissed off by the lack of coverage that it seems to get in general. But, you'd think there'd be more eyes on some of the stuff that they're introducing. You'd think there'd be a bit more concern. From some, I'm not shitting on anybody at all. I'm just saying that sometimes I question maybe I'm looking too much into this shit. And then I have to tell myself, no, I'm not. Because look at all the stuff that I have gone through, and I end up losing my head because it's fucking rancid. Why should this be any different? And as I've said, this seems to be more about undermining parents' rights, destroying the idea, or getting rid of the idea that there is differences between adult and child. On top of that as well, we're politicising children through the back door.